Hello and good evening. Welcome back to Cooking with Chief Tony. I am Chief Tony. I want to appreciate everybody for your love and support. To this evening, we are going to be making one of my favorite meals, which is Croque Monsieur. It is a French ham and cheese sandwich. It's a very fancy ham and cheese sandwich. And I'm also going to be making my oven fried potatoes. So before we get started, I just want to go ahead and do a quick shout out to my Mama Rosie. Happy 50th birthday. I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight, but I want to wish you a happy 50th birthday. And again, that's to my stepmama, Mama Rosie. And so anyway, again, tonight we're going to be making Croque Monsieur with my oven fried potatoes. It is one of my favorite meals to make. And so I'm just going to go ahead and show you real quick what our ingredients are. So we have I went ahead and got 2 sets of Gruyere cheese. They're 2 separate. One is apple smoked and this one is your standard French. And so we've got our ham. I got the honey ham, but you can get whatever ham you like. This is from the deli. It's a little bit thicker than you normally would get. We have sourdough bread. We have Dijon mustard. We have half and half for cream. That's going to be part of our bechamel sauce. I can never say it. My French is horrible these days. We've got sour cream, we've got butter, we've got cheese, we've got our flour, the bechamel, we've got our minced garlic, olive oil, and some of that. We've got fresh green onions, which I was just rinsing off, and we've got we have potatoes. So again, tonight we are making Croque Monsieur with oven fried potatoes, homemade oven fried potatoes, as I love to do them. And so let's go ahead and get started. But as everybody knows, we always wash our hands first. That's Chief Tony's rule, first and foremost. Misty, I wish I did, but pretty soon, maybe one day, you never know. All right, so now we've washed our hands, let's go ahead and get ready for our potatoes because that's going to take the longest to cook. So we're just going to dive right in here, and I hope everybody's doing well. It's starting to warm up here in Vegas. We're definitely starting to feel it. All right, I'm going to move you over here just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way for you. So I'm going to go ahead and peel a potato for you. Just kind of show you how I do it, all right? I'm going to do it over the sink. So this is just one of my potatoes. I went ahead and rinsed it off. And I just use I always use my potato peeler. I used to use paring knives because that's how I was taught, and I always thought it was cool to use a paring knife. I thought I was a grown-up, and you know, honestly, to tell you the truth, it just takes more time, I think, with a paring knife. So I'm going to use my potato peeler, and I'm going through and I'm checking as I'm going through. Hey, Mama Rosie, happy birthday. I wish I could be there. I hope you're feeling better. I know you weren't feeling well this morning when I called. But anyway, so I'm going to check my potato, and I'm looking at the different little pieces here. And so as I went ahead and sliced, you can see that there are some eyes and stuff like that. And some of the bad parts, just go ahead and slice right over those. And if it is deep in the potato, you can still use your potato peeler just to get it out, just like that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show you and this is just kind of how I do it. I kind of use the same technique as I did with my paring knives, and I still have them. Like I said, it's just so much easier to do it this way. Well, I do it the hard way. If I can get it a little bit faster and it done just as good, if not better. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue to slice. So you'll see that there's still like little brown black marks. You can go ahead and get rid of those still just by cutting with the same technique. Okay, so it's not going to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect, which is totally fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take it. I'm just going to rinse it off now, just because of some of the dirt and stuff like that might have gotten on here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward. Let's go right over here, and we're going to go ahead and start slicing, okay? And I'm going to move my onions out of the way because we got a lot going on tonight. So anyway, I didn't prep, by the way, just before. So all I did was cut a couple of potatoes, and that's it. This is pretty much from start to finish. So bear with me tonight. We're in for the long haul. All right. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and slice just like that. I don't want to do too thick. You can do thin, or you can do, if you want to do thick, that's fine. But I'm not going to tonight because the thicker it is, the longer it takes to cook. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that. I've already preheated my oven, as you can hear in the background. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set my knife off to the side. Now I've got my potatoes already nice and cut. And as I stated earlier, I went ahead and cut 4 potatoes. So this is 4 potatoes, and this will make 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and shove these in here, or throw these in here real quick into my little pie pan. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my olive oil, and I'm going to just go ahead and drizzle it over, just like that, okay? And it doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be 100% all over the potatoes, just for the simple fact we're still going to mix and fold and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and take some of my pepper, and I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle over the top. You want to get it nice and even. So even if you have to go around several times, that's fine. You just want to make sure it's nice and even. You don't want too much in one area. And if you do, just be mindful, that you're going to need to spread it out. So I'm just going to lightly salt this, just a little bit. Chief Tony is doing well on his low sodium intake, so I have to be mindful of that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my serving spoons, and I'm going to go ahead and get my minced garlic, and I'm going to go ahead and get 1 good serving spoon of the minced garlic. And I want juice as well, so I'm going to go ahead and just dip that in there like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly kind of salt it over, just like that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take my fingers, and I'm going to get nice and messy here in just a moment as we stir this up. Right, now you can use garlic salt, you can use minced garlic as I did. I'm using the minced garlic because I think it gives a little extra flavor. Plus, not to mention, when you add garlic juice to it, it just adds that extra kick of garlic in there, and I love garlic. So, all right. So as I mix this up here, I'm just making sure that I get all of the potatoes together, and I'm getting them nice and seasoned and flavored and everything else. I'm putting the olive oil all over the place on top of the potatoes, getting them nice and mixed up in here, kind of taking the top ones, moving them to the bottom, trying to get all that oil in there. So there's not a whole lot in there, but it's just enough, and that's exactly it. You need just enough. So as I go ahead and mix these up, as I get them all over the place, they're slippery little buggers. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue to mix these around, move this around. You want to try and get as much as you can on all of the slices. And it gets a little difficult because they're a little slippery or they stick together, those little slices. So you want to make sure that you try and get as much as you can on all of the slices. Once you have done this, then you're going to go ahead and do what I call the domino effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my potato slices, and I'm just going to start lining them up. And it doesn't have to be the same size or anything like that, because you're never going to find the same thing, the same cut from the same potato. So you're just going to go ahead and take these, and you're just going to start lining them up along the side of your pie dish. And this is one of the cool things that I love about this, because it looks almost like the domino effect. So you just lay it down and just kind of turn your dish around. And for my followers who've been following me for a while have seen me do this before. And for those that haven't, this will be a new thing for you to see. But I'm just literally taking these and I'm just kind of fanning it out just a little bit like the dominoes. Kind of laying them down just a little bit, one right after the other. I hope you're well, Miss D. Alright, so I'm just going to continue to move forward with this. And again, they're all different shapes and sizes and cuts. And you kind of want that. And the reason being you don't want them to stick together is because they won't cook if they're stuck together. So that's why it's nice actually having all these different shapes and sizes right next to each other, because then it actually gets inside and the oil has a chance to cook between the potatoes and stuff like that. So that's also another good way to do it and to have it for that reason. So I'm just kind of turning this around as I go along. And if you've noticed, like, you have a lot more potatoes than expected, it's perfectly fine, because you can always scoot it up, lean them up, stand them up a little bit more. That's perfectly fine. As you can see, they will stick because they do have oil on them, so you just have to work with them. Hey Adam, I hope you're well. Alright, so as we start to get this close to the finish, I'll show you in just a moment what our final product looks like here. Alright, so I'm just going to make that nice and neat right there. Kind of get these in here. Alright, I'm going to rinse my hands. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we got going on here. So we got our nice potatoes, nice cut potatoes in our pie pan. Now, I've already turned on my oven so we can go ahead and preheat it to 425. It's already ready, so I'm just going to go ahead and stick my potatoes in the oven so we can get these bad boys into cook, because these are going to take the longest. So the potatoes will actually take anywhere between 40 to 45 minutes. Of course, depending upon elevation and everything else, will depend on, you know, how long it's going to take. So let's go ahead and move forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and cut my onions real quick, so we can go ahead and get that out of the way so we can move forward from that. So I've already went ahead and rinsed these. I bet you are. I bet you are, Mama Rosie. I bet you are. So you want to always rinse your vegetables, and you definitely want to double check your vegetables. So if they have bad little pieces, just rip the little pieces off. But I got some green onions. We're going to put green onions on here, and we're going to put our cheese, and we're going to put some sour cream on here when it's all said and finished. So what I do is I already just kind of line these up, and I'll kind of put that way so you can kind of see. So I kind of line these up as much as I can. You're never going to get it 100% perfect because none of them are the same, but you try and get as much as you can, and then what you miss, you just go back and get. So I'm just going to go ahead and swipe these off to the side. Alright, so then what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and chop the chives. We're going to keep these, we're going to use these in just a moment, okay? So we're going to actually take our bowl here. I got one bowl. I'm going to set my chives in here for just a moment because I'm going to go ahead and get my onions prepared and cut. Okay. And I'm just cutting these just the regular way. They're going to be little tiny circles. All right. And then you kind of want to break them down into the chives at the very top of the onion that we had on there. We're just going to go ahead and break that down as much as possible, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade this out. So I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl. I'm going to put my onions in here because we're going to use these in a little bit. We're not going to use them just now, but we're going to use them in just a little bit over our potatoes. Okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to let them brown just a little bit, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually take our onions and we're going to sprinkle them over the top of our potatoes, and then what we'll do is we'll let them cook. So about 20 minutes in, 20 to 25 minutes, you know, depending upon where they're at in the cooking process, will depend on, you know, where we're at. But we definitely want to make sure that they're browned just a little bit. You don't want them brown too much because the onions won't have time to cook necessarily. So you want to have that nice light brown color to sprinkle these on. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just cutting the chives because I like to use all of the all of the onion, excuse me. Goodness, I must be tired. Oh no. Well, imagine garlic and onions and what else? Oh goodness, I can't even think of what else right at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to rinse my hands. I'm going to wipe down my board real quick just because we've got a lot of, we've had potatoes on here and we've had onions. So I'm just going to wipe it down real quick. Think of butter and all that fun stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close up my minced garlic because I don't need that anymore. All right, so oh yes, and I forgot to mention earlier we got nutmeg. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and start with my sandwich. So as I was saying, we are making Croque Monsieur. So for those that have ever seen Something's Gotta Give with, I believe it's Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin, where she actually made this in the movie. And so after seeing the movie, it took me several years to actually make this. But once I did, it's a phenomenal sandwich, and I can't recommend it even anymore. I actually made this for a good friend of mine and fellow chief, Sister Chief, Claudia Newdorf. I made it for her birthday last year as she was driving through town. So anyway, so she actually got to taste it for the first time at that. So yeah, this is like my second or third time making it, and I fell in love with it. So I had to actually share this recipe. So here's my sourdough bread. I'm only going to make 2 sandwiches just because I want to make sure that you guys have something to compare it to, okay? So we've got our cheese. I'm going to actually use both cheeses. We've got our Dijon mustard, and we have our honey ham, which we have, and then we've got our cheese, we've got our butter. And so what we're going to do in just a moment before we actually get started, these are the components of our sandwich, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of lay that out just like that, okay? I'm going to go ahead and close up our bread and let all the air out of there. Okay, so what we're going to do, these are the components for our sandwiches, and so what I'm going to do is I am going to make our bechamel sauce first. And so bechamel is flour. So we have our half a cup of milk. You can use a half a cup of cream. I'm actually going to use a whole cup of milk or a whole cup of cream, excuse me, in this scenario. 1.5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which I have here. I have 1.5 tablespoons of flour, which I have my big flour here. 1/4 teaspoons of salt, a pinch of pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and start our bechamel sauce first, and then we'll go ahead and actually make our sandwich, because what we're going to do is this bechamel, and I really hope my French is really coming through here because I haven't really spoken French in years, but the bechamel sauce is actually going to go on top of our ham and cheese sandwich, rather. And then what's going to happen is we're going to toast it in the oven, and when we toast it in the oven with some cheese, it's going to get a nice, crunchy, golden brown look to it, and it's really, really, really good. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our flour and our butter first. So I'm just going to move our flour and our butter over to the skillet, to the stove. I'm going to go ahead and turn our stove on to a nice low heat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it warm up the pan first. So going back, I'm going to grab our butter. I'm going to grab our other stuff. So we've got nutmeg, we've got pepper, we've got our half and half. So what's going to happen is we're going to make a roux first, okay? So we're going to go ahead and take our measuring. I'm actually going to measure, guys. This is how serious this sandwich is to me. I am using my measuring tools. This is not me. What is going on? For those that know, I just started my bachelor's in school this past week. So I finished my first week of college. That's all I can say. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually kind of warm up our creamer just a little bit first because it requires to be warm, all right? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and take a bowl and I'm going to measure, okay? I'm going to measure 1 cup of creamer, okay? And so we're just going to go ahead. Now, you can use a half a cup of creamer and a half a cup of milk. I'm using a half a cup of creamer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the microwave. I'm going to let it heat up for about maybe 40 seconds. Nothing too crazy. You don't want it too hot, okay? And then you want to go ahead and take your butter, which is going to be 1.5 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, and for those that get butter like me, I get Land O'Lakes, so it's nice that you already have your measuring component on there. So I'm just going to go ahead like this, turn it over this way. I'm going to go ahead and just plop that right in here, just like that. All right, I'm going to let it just kind of heat up a little bit. While that's going, I just heard my creamer finish. So it's not hot, it is just right. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you. This is what our butter looks like. I'm going to melt the butter. Okay, and as the butter melts, what I'm going to do is, in just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and make a roux. So I'm going to go ahead and get my 1.5 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to go ahead and mix this in. So I'm going to go ahead and set you down right here. Okay, so I'm working with halves here, so we've got, and I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle this in just a little bit. I'm not adding a whole lot. I'm just sprinkling this in. I don't want lumps. I don't want anything. Okay, so there's a half. Okay, and like I said, I'm just sprinkling it over the pan so I can kind of stir it in. I'm trying to get out any bumps or bubbles, and it's going to bubble a little bit just because of the butter, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm just taking my index finger and I'm literally just kind of sprinkling it over the pan. So that's 1 tablespoon. Now I've got 1 more half to put in, and then we can kind of go from there, okay? So as I stir this around, and it's on low, because again, I don't want it to, get too crazy. I'm just kind of sprinkling it like that, stirring it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is what our bechamel looks like so far. So I'm just stirring it up. I want to try and get all of the flour mixed in here. We want to get it nice and cooked. So we don't want the flour to be raw. Okay, so we've got our butter in here. And I'm just taking this, and it's on low. Our fire is on low. Okay, and we're just letting it cook. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my creamer, my 1 cup of creamer, and I'm just going to add it in there slowly like that. As you can see, even on low, it's already bubbling. Okay, so I'm just going to stir this like this. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and let that, I'm going to pour in a little bit more. I'm just pouring a little bit at a time. Okay, and we want this to thicken up really good. Now, again, to avoid lumps and stuff like that, you want to keep stirring. So we're stirring this the whole time. Working out any lumps, bumps. Still pouring more in. We don't want it to burn, but we definitely want everything to be cooked. So as you can see, we got a nice roux. We got everything going here. I'm smoothing it out as we stir. Okay, so I'm going to continue to pour the rest of my creamer in here. We want to get it nice and thick. So I'm just going to continue to stir. We want to mix the flour and the creamer and the butter and everything together. We want to smooth it out as much as possible. We don't want the bottom of the pan to burn. Okay, so while that's brewing, I'm going to go ahead and take some of my salt, or my pepper. So it says a pinch of salt, or, oh my gosh, a pinch of salt. You put salt in this, that's no good. So a pinch of pepper, excuse me. So this recipe was given to me by a friend of mine after I had expressed how much I wanted to try it. So that's pretty much a pinch of pepper. You can use white pepper or you can use this. Okay, so I'm actually just stirring this in. One ingredient at a time. Okay, so don't put salt, put pepper. Alright, so we're going to use nutmeg. Wow, I really must be tired tonight. Alright, so we've got our nutmeg. So we're just going to go ahead and put a sprinkle in there, okay? 2. That should be it. And I'm going to go ahead and mix this. Again, you want to make sure that it's nice and mixed because you don't want it to burn. And you definitely want it to thicken. Okay, so while I let that sit for just a moment, let's take a look at our potatoes. Oh, they're starting to look really good, y'all. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close that. We're going to go back to our sauce here. I'm just going to get the sides. I want to make sure I get all of it because we don't want it to burn. Get a nice thick sauce. That smells really good. So I want it to thicken up just a little bit more. You don't want it to be too watery, but you don't want it to be too thick either. So you want it just enough. Just going to let it sit for just a few more minutes. We're going to let it bubble up a little bit so it'll thicken. Again, you can't let it sit for too long because it will burn. Clockwise, counterclockwise, keep it going. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys like these recipes. Has anybody actually tried them? So I'm just going to continue to stir. We're almost there. So when I'm actually finished with this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off the fire on this one, and then I'm going to cover it so that way I can focus on the sandwich. Okay? So I'm just going to continue to stir. Hey Josie, how's it going? All right, so let's take a look. So we've got our sauce nice and thick, our bechamel. And for those that are just joining us, we're making Croque Monsieur with a nice bechamel sauce that goes on top. We've got some Gruyere cheese with some nice ham and some Dijon mustard. So this is going to be the sauce that goes on top when we put it in the oven, okay? So, all right. So I'm actually going to turn this off now. I'm just going to let it sit. I'm going to go ahead and put my lid on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work on our sandwich now. So this is going to be the fun part. So in everything that we're doing here, we're going to go ahead and make our sandwich. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and grade this. So what I did was I got the same cheese, Gruyere cheese, but this one is apple smoked and this one is the original. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mix them both. Just because this one is apple smoked and this one is, and they're great. And this is actually a very expensive cheese, but it's very well worth it to have this every once in a while. This is definitely not your everyday ham and cheese sandwich. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get another bowl. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grate our cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out. And we're going to just start grating away. So I'm not going to grate all of this. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut it in half. And just so that way I can actually use some of this later. So I'm just going to cut it to this, about half. About half. That smells so good. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grate it into the big grater right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and get my cheese ready to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and grate it real quick. If you could only smell this. Oh, the applewood smoke is amazing. I love it on bacon. I love it on my cheese. I love it. Oh, I love smoked. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, and you can slice it. You can slice this cheese, but I prefer to grate it just because it's easier. A, and two, you don't have to worry about uneven cuts unless you get it cut at the deli. So I am just going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to try and do as much as I can because we're going to use a lot of this. So we'll probably use up this whole half, and then we're going to cut up the other half of the other Gruyere cheese, and we're actually going to use that whole bit too, because everything that we're going to put inside the sandwich we're also going to put on top except for the ham. So as we move forward, I hope everybody had a good day today. I know I had homework this morning and meetings and stuff like that, so it's been nothing but a busy day, but very well worth it and productive. All right. Okay, so I've used up almost all of that. I think we're just going to stop there because we got a good portion of it, and I'll show you in just a moment. And if we have to use more, then we can. So we've got a good portion here, and oh, and it smells so good. Oh, smoked applewood Gruyere cheese. Ooh, yum. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and cut this open. We're just going to go ahead and start slicing and dicing. Wow, this is really suction packed well. If I get any messages, that's what she said. I don't know. All right, so here we go. Just a little bit more. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and grate some of this, and we're just going to mix this with that one. This one is a little bit more firm than the last. As you saw, the other one was a little bit more pliable. This one is not as pliable. So you'll just kind of have to go with it. All right, so we're getting pretty good there. All right, so I'm just going to mix these two together, and I'm just going to take all the little extra little pieces here and there. We're just going to kind of mix it, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and make our first part of our sandwich, okay? Our sandwiches. So the inside, I'm going to put the outsides open. I'm going to take a little bit of my Dijon mustard, and I'm just going to put that down the center, and I'm just going to spread it like any normal sandwich, right? So I'll just take it, and I just want to make sure it's nice and even on this one side of the bread, okay? And if you need a little bit more, then that's fine. But you don't want too much. You want just enough to make it a hint. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to just, again, continue to spread that nice and evenly across. All right, so we have it all on that one's our first slice. Now our second slice, let's just go back and make sure. All right. All right, so that's our first one. So let's go ahead and do the second. We're going to do the second one just the same. So we're just going to spread again, spread. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll do that side instead. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and take my piece of bread and I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I get all of the slice of bread. I hope everyone's having a good day. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm just go ahead and continue. It's okay, got a little on my finger, it's totally fine. I'm just gonna, my hands are clean, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take that. We're just gonna go like that. We're gonna make sure we get as much as we can on here. All right, so now that we've got our Dijon mustard on here, now we're going to go ahead and take our ham. So we're going to take our ham, and it's a little bit thicker, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of fold it just a little bit to give it a little extra thickness. And then I'm going to layer it. I'm going to do it almost like a fan, and I'm just going to kind of layer it that way across. So it's going to take 3 pieces of ham, but it's going to look like it's more. Okay, so now we've got our first one done. Let's go ahead and do our second, and then we'll go ahead and get these bad boys ready to go. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to use 3 pieces of ham. Just kind of set that there for a moment. And I'm going to fan it out just like this. Just so that way it kind of looks like there's a little bit more. It feels like there's more. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got going on here. So this is what it looks like. So we've got our Dijon mustard. We've got our 3 slices of ham. Here's our cheese that we had just grated. Okay, so here in just a moment, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and fry it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my skillet on, my stove, and I'm going to put it on low. I've got my cast iron skillet, and I'm just going to go ahead, and I have a little bit of oil in there, but I'm also going to put a little bit of butter. And the reason is because we want to get a nice crunch to our bread. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my butter, just like this, and I'm going to go ahead and set it in the pan. And while this is starting to melt, I'm going to go ahead and get my sandwiches. So why am I doing it this way? Because we're not actually going to butter the bread, and because we're not buttering the bread, this will be the easiest way to actually get the butter in the pan, melt it, and get it all over the place, and we'll be able to get all of the bread that way, rather than having to do, fry it, or not fry it, but butter it and then, put it in the pan and then having to put everything together that way. It's just easier to do it this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our first sandwich. I'm going to take it just like this, and our butter is melted, so I'm just going to go ahead and set it there just like that. Okay, and we're going to come back and we're going to get our second one, and we're going to come back and we're going to set it down like that. Okay, now I'm going to turn it up just to a low medium heat because we want it to cook, right? So I'm just going to let it cook for just a few moments. You'll start hearing the little popping sounds and everything else. But let's check real quick on our potatoes. Oh my gosh, I think they're almost ready. So, ooh, we got a nice color on them. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull these bad boys out. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle our onions that we had. We're going to sprinkle our onions that we went ahead and chopped up earlier. And we're going to put them on our onions, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn you around, and I'm going to do this real quick, and then I'll show you the results after. Okay, so what I've done is I've just put on our onions and some of our chives. So this is what it looks like now. In this scenario, I don't have bacon. But if you really wanted to put bacon on here, cook bacon, you could. You're more than welcome to. Okay, so what we're doing is we're letting our bread cook on the bottom, and we've got our Dijon mustard, and we got our ham here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and take our cheese, and we're going to go ahead and sprinkle on the top, okay? So let's go ahead. I'm going to sit you down here. And I've already mixed this up, so this is the original Gruyere cheese, and then I have Applewood smoked Gruyere in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take it, and I'm just going to sprinkle on the top of the ham. Now, depending upon which recipe you listen to or follow, everyone does it a little bit differently. This is just something that I found. I found various techniques, and I kind of just ran with my own. It's kind of how I cook. So I just kind of find other people's recipes, I do my research, and once I take a look and everything else, I find out, you know, what is easiest for me. So I try to make things simple while elegant at the same time. So I'm just, again, sprinkling the cheese all over here, all over the ham, and I'm going to let it, and I'm letting it sit while the bottom part cooks. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and take the other two pieces of bread that already have the Dijon mustard on it, and I'm going to go ahead and place it on the top. Okay, now this piece is a little bit smaller than the other one. That's perfectly fine. It's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. So, again, I'm going to go ahead and place the other top on here. Now, you're probably saying, but Tony, that doesn't have any butter on it, and the other part does. We put it in the pan. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing again. So we're going to go ahead and take butter, and we're going to put it in the pan yet again and let it melt. While the cheese is starting to melt right now, we are actually going to let it cook on the other side. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put in some extra butter now. Okay. All right. So as I put in this extra butter, I'm going to set you down because we're going to go ahead, because we're going to flip our sandwich here, our sandwiches here. Okay, so I'm holding on to my sandwich. Okay, and I'm just going to flip it just like that. Now you're going to lose some cheese. I'm just letting you know you're going to lose some cheese, but that's perfectly fine because it's all going to go to the same place. Again, I'm holding here. I'm just going to flip and place. So, this is what our top looks like. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and move this around a little bit. But Tony, we didn't get butter on that side. That's because it's now melted. And we're going to move our sandwiches to the other side. Neat little trick, isn't it? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to let that cook on low for just a few more minutes. Okay? And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our bechamel sauce. Remember that little flour thing that we had just a little bit ago? I'm going to turn this off. And again, we turned off our sauce. It's nice and thick, but it's still warm. You can still see the steam coming up off of it. Okay? I'm just stirring it up so we actually have a point of reference. Take a look. There's our potatoes back in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir that. I've turned off our frying pan over here. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm actually going to go ahead and grate a little bit more cheese because I really want to have this nice golden brown cheesy sandwiches. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rest of this one piece, and it smells so good. It's the applewood smoked Gruyere cheese. To die for. It's expensive, but I love it. Every once in a while. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and use the rest of this. Now our oven is on at 425 degrees. We've had potatoes in there cooking since the beginning of the show. Alright, and we're almost down with that one. Now let's grab this one. Now this is the original Gruyere cheese. It is again, as I stated earlier, just a little bit stiffer than the smoked applewood Gruyere cheese, but it's still good. And I'm just grating it that way. I don't need a whole lot, but we definitely want enough. And enough is going to be dependent upon you. Alright, so now I'm just going to take that and I'm going to scoop up any leftover here and I'm just going to mix it. So we've got some nice mixtures going on here. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and rinse my hands real quick. Alright, so let's get to it. So the best part, we get to put on our bechamel sauce and we get to put in our cheese. So let's go ahead. Again, I'm just stirring this real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and put this on the top. Okay? And I'm actually going to cook this, or I'm going to put it on broil in the oven in my frying pan. So what I'm doing is I'll show you. I'm just literally spreading this out. So we want a nice good cover because this is going to cook and with the cheese it's going to melt all over our Croque Monsieur. Croque Monsieur. Je comprends un peu le français? Un peu le français. Oui, un peu. And I think that's about all I remember of French. Je comprends un peu le français. Oui, un peu le français. Est-ce que vous êtes américain? Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to our other sandwich. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and set you down here. And I'm going to take some of this. Now, you're not going to use all of this unless if you're actually cooking for or making several sandwiches. So this, you could actually freeze this. It doesn't last long, but if you want, you could. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and to continue. I'm just going to be a little generous here on both sides, on both sandwiches. All right, so I'm just going to even it out. All right, it's coming together. I love it. I love it when my Croque Monsieur comes together. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle my cheese along the top. Take the rest of my cheese here. Gonna take some of that over here. Make sure it's spread out. All right, so this is what it looks like, guys, and I'm so excited. All right, so we've got both ready. I'm going to turn off my oven because it's on bake right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and turn on the broiler. So I'm going to broil it on high for a very brief period, okay? But first we got to take out our potatoes because our potatoes are ready. I'm so excited. So let's take a look. So our potatoes are nice and golden brown and they've got a nice crunchy edge. So I'm going to go ahead and get them out real quick. And then we can take and place our Croque Monsieur into the oven. So again, the Croque Monsieur is going to go in, and we're going to put it on broil on high. And let's take a look at our potatoes. Ooh, those smell delicious. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to go ahead and put some cheese over my potatoes. So they're going to be cheese oven baked potatoes. And I don't need to put these back in the oven or anything like that because the heat from the pan and the actual potatoes themselves are going to melt our cheese. And it will almost melt before your eyes. So we're going to let that sit for just a few moments. As you can see, the cheese is starting to melt. And if it doesn't, you can always put it back in the oven. All right, so this is what our Croque Monsieur looks like right now in the oven. And that, guys, is really all there is to it. I mean, it's a fancy sandwich for it being French, for a ham and cheese sandwich, but it is well worth it. Very well worth it. So we're just waiting for our sandwich to actually finish. And it's almost ready. Go back to our potatoes real quick. So what I'm going to do here in just a moment, actually, is to finish off our potatoes here. Is we're going to put some sour cream on here and get it ready for the final tasting. So I love sour cream as well. And what I do is I actually put it in the center of the dish. So that way if people want, they can actually scoop out some of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my chives now, and I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top in the center. So now we have our oven baked potatoes, our oven fried potatoes with sour cream, cheese, chives, all ready to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check on our Croque Monsieur, because it should be almost ready, and we're getting there. So you can either let it just melt the cheese, or you can let it actually cook. You can actually let it cook the bechamel sauce. So we're just going to go ahead and let it cook for about another few minutes, and then by that point we should be good to go. Does anybody have any questions? Alright, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and plate our potatoes while we wait for the rest for our sandwiches to finish. They're almost done, so let's go ahead and get our plate ready, because I'm going to be ready to eat. I'm hungry. I don't know who wouldn't be at this point. So, alright, so what I'm going to do, rinse this off real quick. We're going to set you down and we're going to take a look. Oops. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look. These are almost like a gratin potatoes. Almost, not quite. For those that grew up with a gratin potatoes, it's almost like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my sour cream here. I'm just going to lay that on top. Now I've got some of the cheese there as well. So we want to try and make it a little pretty. Ooh, I hear some sizzling in the oven. Let's take a look. There it is, y'all. Ooh, that looks pretty. Let's turn that off. Let's take a look. We're going to let it sit in the oven for just a few more minutes, just so that way we can get as much toast out of it as possible. Oh, it smells amazing. You have no idea. It smells amazing. I feel like a kid on Christmas Day. I can't wait. I can't wait to taste it. Oh, it smells so good in here. All right, let's take it out. Let's get it ready. All right, and there it is. Oh my goodness, that looks so good. All right, let's go ahead and take this bad boy out. Turn it. Oh, that smells so good. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna turn you around. All right, so let's cut it open. Who wants to see what this tastes like? You gotta try it. Aye. All right, Bubby, here we go. I'm so excited. All right. Ooh, this bad boy's nice and hot. Yeah, buddy. All right. Mm. Ooh, yeah. Oh my goodness. As my grandma used to say, oh my heavenly doodah. Take a look at that. Ooh, mercy. I think my heart just stopped. Let's give it a try, gang. Let's give it a try. Magnifique. All right. Well, it's time for some potatoes real quick. Here we go. You can't lose with this, guys. You really can't. All right. Thank you, everyone. That is today's segment. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or concerns, give me a comment in the box. Hit like, share with your friends, and like us on YouTube, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. Add comments. Let me know if you want me to try anything further. Come on, guys. All right. Thank you. Have a good night. God bless.